It was 6:12 a.m. when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. The kind of hour only runners, shift workers, and people with regrets were awake for. I blinked against the early light seeping through the blinds and reached for it, already half annoyed at whoever was calling before the sun had fully shown its face. The screen lit up. Ronnie work? Ronnie. Madison's colleague. I stared at the name for a second too long, trying to place why that made my stomach clench. He wasn't someone I ever talked to, just a background character in Madison's stories about work. The guy from logistics who made bad jokes, who once got too drunk at a holiday party, who Madison claimed had zero game. And yet, there his name was, burning on my screen. Curiosity won over hesitation. I answered. Hello? Nothing. No greeting. No accidental hang-up. Just silence. Or what I thought was silence at first. Then I heard it, faint breathing, the rustle of sheets or clothes, maybe. The kind of ambient noise that tells you you're not alone even when no one is speaking. Then, softly, unmistakably, I heard Madison's voice. It wasn't the words that hit me, it was the tone. Familiar, yet out of place. In asterisk, mate. Whispery. I'd heard her use that voice before, but it wasn't in the context of spreadsheets and performance reviews. I froze. My pulse quickened, my hand tightening around the phone. She was saying something in a low, playful register. I strained to make out the words, but they were muffled, as if she was speaking with her lips pressed close to someone's ear, or to the phone's mic, maybe unaware it had dialed out. Then click. The call ended. Just like that. For a second, I sat up in bed, phone still pressed to my ear, as if the silence afterward would somehow give me answers. My chest felt tight. I stared at the call log just to be sure I hadn't imagined it. There it was. Ronnie, incoming call, 6:12 a.m. 0:09. 9 seconds. 9 seconds that tilted the axis of my entire morning and maybe my marriage. I didn't have time to think about what to do next because not 2 minutes later, a text popped up on my screen. Madison, went for a morning run. Back soon, 2 hearts. I stared at it. The emoji made my skin crawl. We lived in the suburbs, a quiet cul-de-sac where the only people awake before 7 were retirees and the guy who watered his lawn with military discipline. Madison was never a morning runner. Yoga, sure. Peloton in the garage, sometimes. But a spontaneous pre-sunrise jog? That wasn't her. And definitely not something she'd start the same morning her joke of a coworker accidentally or not so accidentally called my phone and let me hear whatever the hell that was. I sat there for a while, phone in one hand, other pressed to my forehead like I was trying to push the pieces of the morning back into place. The rational part of me scrambled for explanations. Maybe she dropped her phone. Maybe Ronnie but dialed me while talking to someone else. Maybe it wasn't even her voice. Except I knew her voice. I knew the slight rasp it took on in the morning, the breathiness when she whispered something private. And what I heard in those 9 seconds wasn't workplace banter. It was her. Being soft. Being tender. When she came through the door around 6:45, the sky was beginning to shift from gray to gold. She was glowing, a hair tied back, cheeks flushed, skin damp from sweat. She smiled when she saw me and dropped a kiss on my temple. Didn't mean to wake you, she said, pulling off her windbreaker. The air was perfect this morning. I nodded. My throat felt dry. I watched as she slid out of her shoes and padded toward the bathroom, humming something under her breath, some cheery melody she'd probably picked up from a commercial. She didn't seem nervous. Not even slightly off. If she was hiding something, she was a better actress than I gave her credit for. The shower turned on and I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the closed door. Steam started curling out from under it within minutes. And that was it. Nothing explosive. No dramatic confrontation. Just a 9-second call, a chipper good morning, and a man trying to convince himself he hadn't just heard the slow unraveling of his marriage in real time. I didn't say anything. Not then. But something had changed. I couldn't name it yet, couldn't pin it down, but I could feel it. Like a splinter in my brain, working its way deeper with every heartbeat. I spent the rest of the morning pretending I hadn't heard what I heard. I made coffee, fed the dog, scrolled through emails. Madison came down wearing a fresh outfit, kissed me on the cheek again, and said, "See you tonight, babe." I nodded, even smiled a little. But something inside me had shifted. Subtly. Permanently. That call wasn't just a mistake. It was a door opening, a door I couldn't unsee, and one I wasn't sure I was ready to walk through. The thing about betrayal is it rarely drops out of the sky. It's more like a slow leak. A steady drip you learn to ignore until your whole foundation is soaked through. After that call, my brain wouldn't stop replaying moments that had felt insignificant at the time. Things I had written off or maybe didn't want to see. But now, with hindsight doing what hindsight does best, everything looked different. It started with her hours at work. Madison had always been ambitious, driven, even, but over the past few months she started clocking in longer days. It wasn't just the occasional late meeting or looming deadline. It became consistent. She'd leave before me and come back well past dinner, sometimes with takeout containers that smelled like places we never went together. She'd wave it off. We had to wine and dine a new client. Or Ronnie's pitch ran long again, he never shuts up. I used to smile and say, "You're K***ling it," genuinely proud of how hard she worked. But after that call, the same stories started to feel like theater. Too detailed. Too rehearsed. Then there was her phone. It had always been on vibrate, but now it never left her side. Not at night, not even in the bathroom. She used to leave it on the kitchen counter while we watched TV or curled up on the couch. Now, she kept it flipped screen down beside her, every buzz prompting a subtle glance or a slide of her thumb before she'd tuck it away like it was nothing. Once, I casually reached for it while she was making dinner, just to check the time. Her reaction was immediate. "Hey, just ask me," she said, too sharply. Then she smiled, as if to smooth it over. "I've got a million work chats open. Don't want you to see how boring my day is." I let it go, but I didn't forget. She'd also started doing this thing where she'd change clothes after coming home. Not always, but often enough to notice. She used to come through the door, drop her bag, and kick off her heels, still in her work clothes until after dinner. Now, she'd rush upstairs, change into something casual. Sometimes I'd hear the shower running too, and come back down refreshed. First, I thought nothing of it. Then I started catching unfamiliar scents clinging to her. Cologne that wasn't mine. A sweet, spicy smell I didn't recognize. I asked once, half joking, "New perfume?" She blinked, then nodded. "Yeah, a sample someone gave me." I asked, "Who?" She said, "I don't remember," and kept chopping vegetables like I hadn't asked. She also began sleeping differently, always turned away, more restless. She stopped reaching for me in the middle of the night, like she used to. Our conversations started thinning out too. They used to be warm, messy, full of side tangents and shared laughter. Now they were surface level, functional, like we were coworkers politely navigating a shared office. Then came the anniversary dinner, our 7th. She was the one who picked the restaurant, a cozy Italian place where we'd gone on one of our earliest dates. She made the reservation, picked the wine, even teased me about wearing the same shirt I'd worn back then. But 2 hours before we were supposed to leave, she called me from work. "I'm so sorry, babe," she said. "Emergency Zoom with the VP. They moved it up last minute. I can't miss it." I paused. "Can't you join from home?" She hesitated. "It's a confidential financial review. I need to be on site. I'll make it up to you, I promise." I told her it was fine. I even tried to believe it was. But as I sat at that table alone, picking at cold lasagna, I couldn't stop wondering if the VP's face looked anything like Ronnie's. That night, she came home late and went straight to bed. No gift, no card, not even a happy anniversary. She didn't forget. She just didn't care enough to pretend. And then there was the laundry. One night, weeks before the call, I woke up around 1:30 a.m. to the sound of the washer running. It was weird, she never did laundry that late. I padded downstairs and found her in the laundry room, shoving a pile of clothes into the machine with quiet urgency. "Couldn't sleep," she said without looking up. "Figured I'd knock this out." She barely let me near the pile, brushed past me with a forced yawn and said she'd be up soon. The next morning, the clothes were folded and tucked away, never mentioned again. I told myself she was just stressed, overworked. Maybe she spilled something. But something about the way she rushed to cover it up stuck with me. Felt like she was laundering more than just clothes. Another time, she mentioned a work event, a corporate mixer. But spouses weren't allowed. "It's just a networking thing," she said. "Super dull. You'd be bored out of your mind." I remember nodding, but I also remember the way she lit up when she talked about it. She spent hours choosing a dress, fixing her hair, pacing in heels like she was auditioning for something. When she left that night, she looked radiant. And when she came back, she smelled like someone else's cologne. I asked how the event went. She said, uneventful, then changed the subject. Each moment alone might have meant nothing, but together they formed a pattern, a mosaic of lies framed in routine. And the worst part? The signs had always been there, right in front of me. I just didn't want to see them. That's what hurt the most. Not the suspicion, not even the potential betrayal. It was the realization that I had been so willing to give her the benefit of the doubt, so determined to be the good husband who trusted his wife, that I'd ignored my own instincts. The man she married had always been patient, supportive, easygoing to a fault. She said that was what she loved about me. Maybe it was. Or maybe it made me the perfect target. I didn't want to believe she could lie to my face. I didn't want to believe that the woman I'd built a life with could be unfaithful. Not Madison. Not the girl who danced barefoot in the kitchen and cried during commercials. But now I could not believe it. And that was the shift. That slow, quiet erosion of trust that crept in like a fog until everything I thought I knew was obscured. I hadn't confronted her. Not yet. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? I had no hard proof. No confession. Just a series of moments that didn't add up and a gut feeling that felt louder than facts. But the thing about the truth? It doesn't stay buried for long. And mine was already clawing its way to the surface. I didn't plan to catch her. That's the part that sticks with me even now. It wasn't some calculated move, no grand scheme. I just wanted to do something nice. Surprise her at work. Take her out for lunch. Maybe lift the weight that had been sitting between us for weeks. I remember convincing myself that if I made the effort, if I reminded her of what we used to be, it might shift something back into place. That's how I ended up standing outside her office building on a warm Wednesday afternoon, the sun glaring off the windshield as I waited for her to come down. I'd texted her 5 minutes earlier. In the neighborhood. Thought I'd kidnap you for lunch. Hope you're hungry. No response. I figured she was busy, so I parked across the street and leaned against the hood of my car, phone in hand, waiting. That's when I saw her. Not coming out of the office. Not rushing down the sidewalk, smiling with surprise at my spontaneous gesture. No, she was across the street, on the terrace of a cafe I didn't recognize, just around the corner from her building. She was sitting outside in the sun, her back to me, laughing. And she wasn't alone. Ronnie was sitting across from her. I knew it was him even before he turned. He looked just like his company photo. Same slicked back hair, same cocky lean. He was reaching for something, his fingers brushing hers across the table. Her smile, God, that smile was soft, familiar in a way I hadn't seen in weeks. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just watched. She reached forward, said something I couldn't hear, then leaned in, and right there, in plain view, kissed him on the neck. It wasn't a passionate, heated moment. It wasn't reckless or wild. It was something worse, comfortable, like they'd done it a dozen times before. Then, as if choreographed, they stood up together. No rush, no guilt. Madison adjusted her blouse. Ronnie pulled out his wallet, tossed a few bills on the table. They left the cafe side by side. And then, they turned toward the hotel. There was a boutique place a few doors down. Discreet, modern, tucked between a yoga studio and a wine bar. I'd walked past it 100 times. Never gave it a second thought. I did now. They slipped inside through the glass doors like it was routine. And that's when my body finally moved. My hand raised, almost without thinking, phone pulled from my pocket. I took the video in one long, shaky clip. Madison and Ronnie walking, laughing, leaning into each other, disappearing into the hotel. No words, no zoom, just evidence. When they were gone, I stood there for what felt like forever. I wasn't even sure what emotion I was supposed to feel. Rage? Betrayal? Sadness? I felt nothing, just a numb hum behind my ears. Eventually, I got in the car and drove. Not home, not anywhere in particular, just away. That night, she came home at her usual time, 6:37 p.m., like clockwork. She walked in with the same smile she always used, kissed me on the cheek, dropped her keys in the bowl by the door. You won't believe how swamped today was, she said, tossing her bag on the counter. Ronnie was in rare form. He totally derailed the meeting with that crypto client. I swear, that guy's allergic to structure. I just nodded. I watched her move around the kitchen like she hadn't spent the lunch hour kissing the same guy she was now mocking. Like she hadn't stepped into a hotel room with him while I watched from across the street. You okay? She asked after a minute, sensing something. You seem quiet. Long day, I said. She didn't press. She never did when it didn't serve her. We ate dinner, watched a show. She laughed at the same parts one used to love. I barely touched my food. At one point, she reached for my hand. Hey, we should plan a weekend getaway. Just us. Feels like we haven't recharged in forever. I looked at her then, really looked, and I wondered how many lies you had to stack before they started spilling over. How many times she'd looked at me with that same expression, masking something darker beneath. That night, I didn't sleep much. I watched the video over and over again. Not because I doubted what I saw, but because part of me couldn't believe she let herself be that careless. That visible. That open. It wasn't even an affair hidden in the shadows anymore. She wasn't afraid of being seen. She didn't think I'd ever be close enough to notice. She thought I was that blind. The next morning, she left for work with the same kiss, the same smile, the same routine. But I didn't follow. I stayed home, sat in the quiet and stared at the phone in my hand. The video was there, time-stamped, saved to the cloud. I typed a message, just her name and nothing else. Then I attached the video and hit send. No caption, no question, no warning. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. Mark, can we talk? Please. It's not what it looks like. I didn't answer. Another buzz. Can I come home early? Please. I need to explain. Still, I didn't respond. By evening, she walked through the door. Her eyes were wide, hair slightly disheveled, like she'd been crying in her car. She looked around the room like it was suddenly foreign to her, like she was the one unsure of where she stood. Mark, she said, please, can we talk? I stared at her, at the woman who had once been my home. I've got nothing left to ask, I said. She started crying, mumbled something about mistakes, confusion, needing clarity, feeling lost. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I just stood there and let her unravel in real time. And somewhere in that mess, she realized the truth. I wasn't going to give her a fight. I was just going to let the silence do its work. The truth was no longer buried in suspicion or hidden behind excuses. It was in plain sight, and now there was no turning back. 2 days passed. She didn't leave. She didn't pack. She barely even slept. Madison hung around the house like a ghost haunting a place that no longer wanted her. She tried everything. Meals I used to love, playlists we'd made years ago, subtle touches on the shoulder, soft attempts at conversation, all carefully timed, all loaded with silent pleas for forgiveness. But I didn't bite. She cried, sure. But I could tell it wasn't about what she'd done. It was about being caught. About the loss of control. Madison had always known how to stay one step ahead of perception. She lived by the story she told others. But the story was slipping, and she could feel it. On the third day, she changed tactics. She came home with a gift bag. It was subtle, like everything she did when she wanted to manipulate an outcome. A gold ribbon, a handwritten card, her favorite brand of dark chocolate. I watched her place it on the kitchen counter like an offering to a god she no longer believed in. Inside the card, for every memory that still matters. I'm sorry. No explanation. No real apology. Just the kind of poetic detachment that sounded nice on paper. Later that evening, she brought out a suitcase. I'm going to stay with Laura for a bit, she said, just to give us space. But I want you to know, I'm not giving up on this. On us. I said nothing. She waited for a reaction, then gave up and wheeled her suitcase out the door. That weekend, we were both invited to a birthday party for one of our mutual friends. Nate. It was one of those casual backyard things. Burgers, drinks, a few too many shared memories. I hadn't planned on going. But then I thought, maybe I should. Not to start drama. Not to throw a grenade. But because silence has power and sometimes the truth needs air. Madison showed up first. She had that look she always wore when she wanted to reclaim her image. Perfect hair, subtle makeup, breezy sundress. She greeted everyone like nothing was wrong. Like her marriage hadn't just imploded in a hotel doorway. I arrived 15 minutes later. No smile. No small talk. Just a nod to the host and a quiet beer in the corner. It didn't take long for her to notice me. She walked over, forced a laugh. Didn't expect you here. Didn't expect you to lie so easily, I said flatly. That shut her up for a second. Then, like flipping a switch, she turned toward the group, dragging conversation into the public space. He's always been intense, she said to a nearby couple, a joking edge in her voice. Very all or nothing. Sometimes I think he forgets we're human, not courtroom defendants. A few people chuckled. Uncomfortably. I said nothing. She kept going. Ronnie was just a friend, she insisted, loud enough for everyone to hear. We leaned on each other during some rough patches. Mark always made things so rigid. There wasn't any room to breathe. She turned to me, eyes wide with faux sincerity. But we all make mistakes, right? Relationships are messy. It's just some people don't know how to forgive. I still said nothing. Instead, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. With one quick tap, I opened the video. No sound needed. Just the image of her, holding Ronnie's hand, kissing him, walking into a hotel. I hit play and held it up to her. She paled. The guests around us quieted as they turned toward the screen. No one said a word. Just the faint sounds of the party still going on in the background and the quiet hum of the video as it looped. She stepped back like I'd hit her. You recorded me? I didn't follow you, I said. I was trying to surprise you. Thought we'd get lunch. Her jaw clenched. Her hands trembled. Mark, we don't need to do this here. I looked at the group. I didn't. But you did. And then I left. I didn't slam a door. Didn't shout. I just walked out of that backyard with the weight of silence behind me. The next day, my inbox was full of texts, emails, missed calls. Some from friends. Most from her. One message read, I'm so sorry. I panicked. Please let's talk privately. Another. I shouldn't have lied. I was afraid. I didn't know how to face you. And finally, you humiliated me. You didn't have to do that. That one made me laugh. Humiliated her? She demolished trust like it was a sandcastle and got mad when someone pointed at the rubble. But she wasn't done. A few days later, she posted a long note on Instagram. A picture of a sunrise, captioned with a paragraph that read like a TED Talk transcript. Sometimes growth comes from failure. Sometimes love doesn't look like what we expect. I've learned so much about accountability and the complexity of marriage. I'm stepping into a new chapter. This isn't the end, it's a transformation. The comments were full of hearts and generic encouragement. You're so strong. Proud of you. We all make mistakes. A few people knew better. They didn't comment. But the performance continued. She showed up to events alone but carried herself like a phoenix. She spoke in carefully curated sound bites. And slowly, she started telling a different version of our story. He didn't understand me. We were growing in different directions. I made a mistake, but he chose punishment over compassion. I didn't respond. Not online. Not in person. Because that was her game. The story. The spin. The carefully managed image. And I wasn't playing anymore. All I had to do was tell the truth. And it had already told itself. The fallout didn't come all at once. It unraveled slowly like stitches snapping from the inside of a worn-out seam. A snag here, a tear there, until the whole thing just gave way. At first, Madison tried to frame it like a reinvention. She moved in with a friend, Lara, of course, and started posting long captions on social media about healing, growth, owning your truth. She launched a blog called Rebuild Her, complete with soft pastel branding and inspirational quotes from Brené Brown and Elizabeth Gilbert. She positioned herself as someone finding strength in adversity. Except people weren't buying it. The video had leaked. I didn't release it publicly, but in a world where people share everything in private group chats, it didn't need to hit social media to make the rounds. Someone at that backyard party had recorded the clip from my phone, blurry, off-angle, but unmistakable. Word spread fast, and it spread deep. The first hit came quietly. A client dropped her from a consulting gig. It wasn't immediate. No formal complaint. Just a gentle email from an HR rep who didn't feel confident continuing the relationship due to recent events. I only heard about it through mutual connections. Then her company put her on leave. They phrased it diplomatically, something about internal review and preserving corporate integrity. But behind the curtain it was clear the leadership didn't want to be associated with the woman from the hotel video. Ronnie vanished soon after. He deleted his Instagram, stopped showing up to work, and transferred to a different office, something in Phoenix, I heard. No goodbye post. No explanation. Just gone. Like a shadow that had overstayed its welcome. Madison tried to pivot. She leaned harder into the blog, publishing essays with titles like When Redemption Begins with Collapse and Owning Your Mistakes Without Shame. There were photos of her journaling in cafes, hiking solo trails, smiling with a ceramic mug in soft focus. She claimed she was evolving, that she was no longer defined by one decision. But the narrative didn't stick. People she thought would rally behind her started stepping away. A few unfollowed. Others sent her polite messages of support followed by long silences. And then came the confrontation she hadn't expected from within her own professional circle. One of her former colleagues, Rachel, posted a cryptic Instagram story. No names. Just a black screen with white text. Some people rebrand betrayal as growth. Funny how they never apologize to the people they hurt, just their followers. It didn't take a detective to know who it was about. Madison didn't respond publicly. But the next week, she disabled comments on her blog. Eventually, she took the site down altogether. I never reached out. Never gloated. I didn't need to. Watching her construct a new persona only to watch it collapse under the weight of its own hypocrisy was enough. She tried to sue me. Or, rather, she threatened to. A formal letter arrived at my door, a cease and desist, claiming I had damaged her reputation by circulating the video. She said it was filmed without her consent, that it violated her privacy, that it was slander. My lawyer responded within 24 hours, attaching a copy of the video's metadata and the street footage timestamp proving it was taken in a public space. You were not recorded in a private setting, the letter read. And the distribution was not initiated by our client. They didn't reply. Case closed. From there, it was radio silence. No more lawsuits. No more blog. No more posts about second chances or soulful sunrises. She reached out one more time, weeks later. I'll never forget the message. Mark, please? I've lost everything. My job. My savings. I don't have anyone left. I just want to talk. I just want to fix this. It came at 2:13 a.m. A text that sounded more like a gasp than a sentence. I didn't answer. She called the next day. I let it ring. Then she emailed. Subject, just one conversation. Body, I miss you. I miss us. I made a mistake, but I can't go back in time. Please let me explain. I don't want to be remembered like this. I didn't delete it. I didn't open it either. Because this wasn't about memory. It was about consequence. I had no interest in punishing her. I wasn't out to destroy her life. But actions have a way of burning bridges on their own, and she'd lit the match all by herself. Word filtered through over time. She picked up work as a courier, delivering packages around the city. Someone saw her one afternoon in a company polo, headphones in, running to beat the timer on a delivery app. Another friend saw her at a coffee shop recording into a microphone at the corner table. Apparently, she'd started a podcast. It was called Second Wind. Each episode was her voice, slow, deliberate, trying to sound wiser than she was. She talked about resilience, regret, redirection, the art of starting over. She never mentioned me. But every story had echoes of our life, distorted, reframed, refracted through the lens of someone desperate to be seen as a phoenix. I listened once. Just once. And then never again. Because the version of me she described, the unforgiving partner, the distant husband, the man who chose judgment over compassion, he wasn't real. He was a ghost she needed to summon to excuse her own choices. The real me? I was just a man who loved his wife. And that wasn't enough. A year after everything collapsed, I moved to Austin. It wasn't just about leaving the house, the neighborhood, or the coffee shop where Madison and I used to sit and pretend things were fine. It was about starting over, somewhere unfamiliar where no one knew my story unless I chose to tell it. I launched a small design consultancy from my apartment, just me and a laptop on a second-hand desk. At first, it was slow, cold emails, ignored pitches, awkward Zoom calls. But bit by bit, things picked up. A local cafe hired me to redesign their menu and branding. Then a yoga studio. Then a nonprofit that held youth events. Word spread. One day, a journalist reached out. She was doing a feature on solo entrepreneurs and had heard about the guy who bounced back after getting blindsided. She didn't ask for details, but I gave her a few. Just enough to be honest without letting it define me. The article went viral in local circles. Sympathy followed, but so did support. People respected the comeback. They saw the work, not the wreckage. That's where I met Lauren. She was a speaker at a youth center event I helped design, the kind of woman who didn't talk to fill silence. She was calm, grounded. An architecture professor who sketched while she listened, who asked real questions and waited for the answers. She didn't know about Madison. Not right away. And when I did tell her, she didn't blink. She just listened. With Lauren, there were no games. No sudden silences. No hidden tones in casual texts. She came as she was. And I showed up the same. Life didn't fix itself overnight, but for the first time in a long while, it didn't feel like I was trying to glue pieces back together. It felt like I was building something new. 2 years after that early morning phone call, I got married again. The ceremony was small. Backyard. A dozen chairs, folding table, fairy lights. I strung myself. Lauren wore a simple dress. I wore the same tie I'd worn to my first job interview, the one Madison had once called too hopeful. This time, it wasn't about the crowd. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about peace. An hour before the vows, I opened a drawer in my home office and pulled out a flash drive. The one with the video. The evidence. The moment my life split in two. I stared at it for a long time. Then I threw it away. Not in anger. Not in triumph. Just, finally. Because it didn't matter anymore. I'd carried it long enough. I'd let it weigh down new beginnings, shape conversations, sit between silences. Letting it go didn't erase what happened. It just freed me from carrying it forward. I heard Madison worked for a courier company now. Her podcast still posted new episodes, most under 300 plays. Sometimes her photos appeared in suggested posts on social media. She always looked tired in them. Like someone pretending she wasn't exhausted. I never clicked. Because that part of my story was done. I was no longer the man who needed justice. I was the man who'd survived it. And now? I was someone who once played a video. And then chose peace.